so that I can be a little bit closer to you. 안녕하세요. Now that was a greeting in Korean. Would you like to try to say it? I will say it first and you can repeat after me. Okay? 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
You could almost pass as a Korean. Tonight, I want to share something with you. Pearl Buck. She was a woman, perhaps the most wonderful way to just demonstrate how one can bring the whole world into one humanity. She used her compassion, she used her writings, and she used her life to just bring the world closer together. And tonight, I would like to share with you a little bit of my life story to show you how she made a difference. I am an Amerasian. Amerasian is a mixed race of American and Asian. Amerasian. My mother escaped North Korea and was married to South Korean man. But during the Korean War, he was killed. And soon after that, my half-sister died of malnutrition at the age of 2. My mother, not being able to support herself, she resorted to working at a coffee house, and there she met my father, who was an American GI. My mother and my father were never married, but they had a living arrangement that I was born. When I was but 1 year old, my father went back to the United States, and my mother told me that he wanted to take me with him to the United States, but I'm really thankful she didn't consent to his wishes. You see, he was married and had 3 children back home. My mom and I, we lived in a small one-room house. So if you can look at right over there with the window and right over this piano, the little tiny corner was the size of our one-room house, with no running water, no electricity, public outhouse, and outside kitchen that was only covered by the edge of the roof of a house. When it would rain, my mom would get wet as she prepared our food. Often, it was difficult to come up with enough money to buy rice. So I wanted to help. So I sewed gum and shined shoes and washed other people's clothes by the creek to help earn the money. It was difficult enough that we were very poor, but people of the community, especially children, didn't make our lives any easier. I was often teased, ridiculed, spat upon, and called all kinds of names, saying that I was less than a dog. Then you might be wondering, Julie, why? You look okay. I think I look all right. But when you look at me, you see an Asian woman. But when Koreans looked at me, they only saw the American features in me. You have to understand, at that time, times have changed, but at that time, mixed race person like myself was despised and ridiculed in my motherland. I remember many days I would come from school crying because of all the teasing and ridicule is much more than I can bear. My mom and I would sit down together, we would hug each other, and we would cry together. There was once a song called You and Me Against the World. It almost felt though as my mom and I against the world. And you might be wondering, Julie, how do you feel Korean people now? They are my people. They are my mother's people. I have no ill feelings. I feel that often unknown produces fear, and often fear produces prejudice. When it was time for me to enter grade school, I had a legal problem. I did not have a last name. I did not have a birth certificate. I did not even have a citizenship. And then you might be wondering, how can that possibly be? But according to Korean law at that time, you are a citizen of your father's country. That meant I was to be an American. But according to American law, you are a citizen of the country you are born. That meant I should be Korean. Neither country wanted me. I used to think perhaps I belong somewhere in the middle of a Pacific Ocean. Kindly, an orphanage father of our town allowed me to assume his last name, and I was able to enter grade school. A Korean government provided free education up to 6th grade, so at that time, there was no way that I could ever continue my education. And my mom was very concerned what would become of me. You see, no Korean man in right mind will marry a mixed-race person like myself, and without an education. My future looked bleak. About this time, Pearl Asphalt Foundation sent a social worker to our town. And she did not have any problem finding where I lived. And so the reason this social worker came is because of a lady named by Pearl Buck. She's the lady who wrote a book called The Good Earth. How many of you read that book? See, I knew in this group you would because she was so multicultural minded. And through that book and through many other literary works, she was the first American woman to receive a Nobel Prize. Now, when she was growing up in China, as a daughter of a Chinese American missionary that was stationed in China, do you know one time she was almost killed because she was fair and she was blonde. And this gave her the new sensitivity for the people who are discriminated because of their color or creed. And then I'm going back and forth a little bit here, but you are really with me. One day she was visiting Korea. While she was walking on the street, she told me that she felt a tug by a Korean-speaking boy in a blue eyes with ragged clothes, begging for $1. She told me that she felt such a compassion for this child, and she inquired why such children. And when she learned the plight of this mixed-race children in Asian countries, she came to America. She used her influence, she used her writings, and she used her money. And she established Pearl Asphalt International in 6 different Asian countries. And that was the reason why this social worker came to our town. I left my mom at the age of 13, and I was so thankful. Without the sponsorship that was provided for me, there was no way I could have ever continued my education. And I'm standing before you here. That sponsorship meant so much. Now, while I was in school, I received a telegram saying that my mother has passed away. When I first read that telegram, by the way, you know what telegram is, right? Instant message on a little piece of paper. But anyway, when I first read it, I could not believe what I read. I kept telling myself that this is a dream. When I wake up, everything will be just fine. But it was not a dream. I remember crying myself to sleep most of the nights. And I remember praying that God will protect me and provide me with a family someday. I purposed in my heart to study very hard. I studied while others played, and I studied while others slept. At 10 o'clock this Pearl Asphalt Opportunity Center, the light went out. I would gather up my books, tiptoe into the bathroom. I would sit on the floor and I would study. My effort did not go in vain. I was ranked first out of more than 600 students. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not very smart. I was just scared. I was lonely. I was hungry. I got perhaps in education that I might have future. This effort caught the attention of the Presbyterian Foundation, Mr. Amos. He wrote a letter to Prabhupada informing about me. And when Prabhupada came to Korea, she met with him. And she decided to bring me to the United States to live with her as her daughter. It was like a Cinderella story, truly rags to riches. All of a sudden, my name became Julie Comfort Walsh. Comfort was Prabhupada's middle name. Pearl Comfort Seidenstricker. What do you think of her last name? And she was married to, her second marriage was to Richard J. Walsh, who was the president of the John Day Publishing Company. So mother used to write books, and he used to publish them, and they did just fine. So when I was living at that house at that time, we had more than 600 acres of land. We had a big swimming pool, tennis court, basketball barn. We had 2 gardeners, chauffeur, cook, housekeeper, secretary. Would you believe I didn't even have to clean my room? I really wish that was the case now. And I used to go to a lot of exquisite stores and buy the stuff that I wanted or needed. And I only had to sign my name, Julie Walsh, and mother paid it all. And my husband wishes that was the case now. And when I was living at the house, we used to go to a lot of symphony orchestra in Philadelphia. Eugene Armandi used to conduct. And I would hold mother's arm and we go up to the second floor reserved for her. And so many people used to stand up and give her a standing ovation. And I'm only 5'1". I felt like 6'5", 300 pounds. You know, it was so awesome. I could tell you so much about what it was like to live in the house, but because of the time constraint, I just want to share this with you in closing. I tell you today, standing before you, my heart is filled with thanksgiving. Truly thankful that Prabhupada brought me to the United States and raised me as her daughter. And I am so proud of her. You see her life by her compassion she had, by the writing she did, and by her life. She not only helped so many needy children, including myself, she also has opened the windows for us to better understand the Asian culture. So I decided to bring this with me today. You see, in this group, I see that you are very multicultural minded. But in America, it wasn't always like that, was it? You will know that. See, prior to Prabhupada introducing all the cultures of China and other Asian countries, we were like beholding mirror, looking at our own mirror and seeing ourselves only. But she, through her wonderful writing, she opened the windows so all of us could experience the creativity and uniqueness and all different things that we can celebrate as you were able to witness tonight. Did you understand all those words that they were singing? No, but they lifted our hearts. And so, with that open-mindedness. But then I am so praying and hoping that Mother's legacy will continue on. And all these people who are sitting over there, these are the people, they tirelessly They work to meet the needs of many children, old and young, special needs children, the ones that need to be educated. Can you imagine if I didn't get the education? Now I'm a teacher. I can influence many students because their sponsorship made it possible for me to be educated. Otherwise, without that, I do not know what my life would be like. So these people work so hard, including the many sponsors, volunteers, and I know group of this size. With your multicultural mindedness in your heart, beating in your heart, I hope that you might even open your heart to perhaps adopt an older child to come and live with you. Perhaps you sponsor a child so that child could have the education and become a productive citizen where they are. Would that make our hearts warm too? You have given me the wonderful attention. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful evening.